Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm gonna be testing an affordable 27-inch 1440p 240Hz monitor from Koorui. This is the Koorui 27E3QK and it's usually priced at $400, but with Black Friday sales, it's now down to just $280. And my friends, I gotta tell you, that is an absolute steal. This monitor has an IPS display with a resolution of 2560 by 1440, which looks amazing at 27 inches with a PPI of 109. It's also G-Sync and FreeSync compatible, and coupled with those glorious 240Hz, it feels buttery smooth. I honestly wasn't expecting these kinds of specs in a monitor for this low of a price tag so soon. That's crazy. Let's get into the display tests, shall we? Color accuracy is first. I used this tool in DisplayCal 3 to measure it, and it got me a result of 99.7% of sRGB, 81.2% of Adobe RGB, and 93.1% of DCI-P3, which is great for a gaming monitor. You're not missing out on any colors here, and it looks beautiful and vibrant while gaming. Out of the box, the color calibration was only slightly off, and after adjusting it with these values, it was perfect. I used the same tool to record peak brightness as well as lowest brightness, and we got a maximum result of 435 nits, which is plenty bright, although not really that great for HDR, and this is an HDR 400 certified monitor, but you know, like, HDR only becomes really nice and good looking at 600 plus in my opinion. But that's not a big deal, especially for the price point. The lowest brightness that I recorded was 67 nits, which is pretty dim, you know, it feels comfortable in a completely dark room. Contrast-wise, I don't have a tool to test this out, unfortunately, but they advertise a 1000:1 contrast ratio, which I believe that's completely normal for IPS monitors. Not the best, obviously, but hey, it works. And for example, playing Cyberpunk 2077 still looked very good at night. I was getting pretty nice contrast levels here with 85% brightness on the display, and I could still see very nice detail on the darker areas of the game. No problems here. Now we're gonna take a look at probably the most important thing in a gaming monitor like this one: response times. And to test this, I used this LDAT sensor sent by NVIDIA. With a 240Hz monitor, you need response times to be really quick, specifically under 4.17 milliseconds to get 100% perfect transitions without ghosting, motion blur, or like smearing. And with out-of-the-box settings, without any overdrive settings enabled, I got 6.1 milliseconds of gray-to-gray response time on average, which is fine. You know, it means that not 100% of the transitions were perfect, but it still felt really quick, really smooth, and I couldn't really spot any ghosting or motion blur while gaming anyways. But do not go anywhere, my friends, because when I enabled the overdrive setting set to fast, there are a couple of options by the way, it dropped the response times down to just 3.4 milliseconds on average of gray-to-gray response times. That is an insane value, especially with only 3.6% of overshoot, which was not noticeable whatsoever. So this is definitely the setting that I would utilize. It works really well. It's a perfect experience almost. Maximum response times were at 4.4 milliseconds, which means that not 100% of the transitions were perfect, but it's nearly perfect, guys. You're not gonna see any ghosting or black smearing or anything. It's a really fast IPS monitor, this one. But you know what? There is also the fastest option under the overdrive settings, and that got the response times down to just 2.5 milliseconds on average. That is insane. Unfortunately, though, it got a lot of overshoot at around 30%, so I can't really recommend this mode as overshoot will be very noticeable like this. But yeah, the fast mode is is just already way better than I expected, especially for this price point, so just go with that. But let's go dark right now to test some backlight bleed. What you're seeing here is a completely black screen, and I slowed the camera's shutter speed a little bit so the bleed is more visible. As you can see, there's a bit of bleed towards the top left and the bottom right corner, but with the naked eye you can only notice it a little bit and only on a completely black screen. If you're gaming, for example, even in a dark game like Cyberpunk 2077 at night, it is not gonna be noticeable whatsoever. So I'd say it's pretty good in this area, just normal for IPS, and I've seen some worse IPS monitors for sure. And that's it for the panel itself. We got some really outstanding results that I was not expecting coming from a budget 240Hz 1440p monitor. Response times were amazing, color accuracy was great, contrast levels are good enough, and backlight bleed is alright. There's no problems there either. I mean, this is a proper high-end IPS display right here. And you know what? Digimoon even wants to keep it for her gaming setup, and she's using a 4K 144Hz monitor that's IPS, that's also a high-end display, and it's way more expensive than this one, but still, she wants to trade it because, 1440p is way easier to run than 4K. The experience is buttery smooth, and it just looks great, guys. It's vibrant, it's saturated, I like it. Let's move on to build quality now. They must have cut some corners, right? The monitor is all made of plastic, but it feels sturdy, there are no creaks or anything, and it has some wobble, although it's probably very minimal. While playing the game on a desk, I wasn't really seeing any wobbling, which is nice. The monitor arm allows for a lot of adjustability. You got the ability to tilt, swivel, adjust the height, and even putting it in a vertical position, or pivot. Pivot? Yeah, pivot. I think that's it. This sure is a big step up compared to Koorui's lower-end monitors. The only small issue that I have with it is that there isn't a click or any indication that the monitor is in a true horizontal position. You just gotta eye it a little bit. Now, on the back of the monitor, we find the little joystick, which I really like, instead of like those 4 buttons that are super annoying to navigate menus with. This is absolutely fine. It works very well. The on-screen display is feature-packed as well. You can adjust the usual color, brightness, contrast, overdrive, variable refresh rate, on and off, HDR, and so on. But what I'm most impressed about is that they included a sharpness slider, guys. Because in the previous 2 monitors from Koorui that I reviewed, they shipped with an on-screen display that didn't allow us to adjust sharpness. Not that it's needed, these monitors are very sharp out of the box anyways, but some people like a little bit more sharpness, some people like a little bit less sharpness, and it's good to adjust it. Still on the back of the monitor, we find a VESA mount. It actually comes with some screws in the box if you want to mount it that way, and below we find the ports. There are a couple of HDMI 2.0 ports, one DisplayPort connection that you'll want to use to take advantage of those 240Hz, a headphone jack, which definitely sounds better than the previous 2 monitors from Koorui that I tested, but it still sounds bad because it has 0 bass, okay? And finally, the AC power plug. Also, on the topic of sound, this doesn't have any speakers, okay? The volume controls in the on-screen display are just for that headphone jack. Lastly, guys, I want to talk to you about the gaming experience at 240Hz and 1440p. First of all, you'll need a very beefy PC if you want to achieve 240 FPS in most games that you play. And for that, I have paired the monitor with an RTX 4080 as well as a Ryzen 9 7950X 3D and 32GB of DDR5 6000 MHz RAM. That's a very expensive machine, but at least you'll be saving on the monitor if you go with the Koorui right here. Nice. Starting with Counter-Strike 2, I played a lot of it with my friends on this monitor right here, and it's actually my go-to monitor now to play esports with them. In this game, I was consistently above 240 FPS, and it was a blast. It's not a night and day difference compared to 144Hz or 165Hz, but the difference is definitely there. I found myself hitting more headshots more often, and it definitely improved my skills in this particular title compared to my already pretty decent skills at 120 Hz. Like, my main monitor is 120 Hz actually, it's an OLED TV. But you know what's really interesting? Now every time I go back to a 144 Hz or a 120 Hz monitor to play Counter-Strike on, it actually feels sluggish. What the hell, mate? Dota 2 was also good fun when the other team wasn't really steamrolling us, which happened very often, might I add. Now, this isn't a game where you need to get like 240 FPS consistently. Even the game is capped to 240 FPS, actually. I was very close to that value, even at the highest settings possible, and it was a really nice game to play, but mostly because of the visuals. I really like Dota 2's visuals. They look very vibrant and saturated, and it looks great in this IPS display. Now, moving on to the AAA first-person shooter world. I started with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer, which was giving me a super high FPS experience. That was lovely. I thought it was gonna perform a little bit slower than that. I didn't use the frame generation in this game, but I did utilize low settings with high textures and high shadows, as well as DLSS quality, and it was looking great at the 1440p resolution and playing amazing. As you can see, it was the smoothest Modern Warfare 3 experience that I've ever had. And to think that I played these same maps back in 2009 in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 with 25 to 40 FPS. If I told little Crispo back then that he would be playing these same maps in a new title in 2023 with 250 to 300 frames per second most of the time, he would be stoked. And he'd be also thinking, why would we still be playing these maps in 2023? On to Battlefield 2042 now. It looked awesome with its vibrant colors and high FPS as well. I was playing this at 1440p high settings above 220 frames per second most of the time, and it was a super buttery smooth experience. This game is also very cheap right now on Steam with an 84% discount, and although it's not worth buying at full price, give it a shot now. It's a much better experience than at release, and I had quite a bit of fun playing it these days. And lastly, Cyberpunk 2077. We have to kill Bob. Now, this isn't really an esports title or a competitive one. Obviously, it's a single player. But thanks to the NVIDIA frame generation technology, I was actually able to achieve 240 FPS sometimes at 1440p high settings with DLSS on quality. It's not as beautiful as ray tracing settings, obviously, but it's still beautiful. And I gotta be honest here, it's kind of crazy that high settings look this good in this game and that we can achieve such high FPS. Once again, I also tested this during nighttime, and as you can probably see, although not very well from the camera footage because it's just a camera recording a monitor, it looked very good and contrast was looking great. Everything really popped in terms of vibrancy and colors. And now that's it for this video, guys. The Koorui 27E3QK is a beast of a monitor, especially at its low price point. Even at the MSRP of around $400, this is worth its price, let alone at $280 during Black Friday. So yeah, keep an eye out for deals, even if you watch this a little bit later in the future, you know, not during the Black Friday sale, because these usually go on sale very often. It's a great monitor, guys. It's a really nice panel right here. I can't really think of any downsides to it. Maybe aside from it having no speakers, headphone jack sounds bad, HDR is not really great with 435 nits, but that's about it. I mean, for the price, it's a steal, once again. Thanks very much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll catch you in the next one very soon. As always, love you all. Bye-bye.